Okay. Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Isn't this working? That's working. Okay. I think we're on. All right, Baruch Hashem. Welcome, everybody, to the exciting conclusion of our series of Taam Dagan. We started this exactly 1 year ago. Parshat Akev is where we started. So it's a little bittersweet for me that we've concluded. What we've found is that every single parsha in the Torah so far has lessons about food, nutrition, health, and hopefully this will be publishable. We're working on that, this collection. And meanwhile, though, let's uh, let's see about the what we're doing here today is what we're again a little bit unique. We're going to start with the end of Taam Dagan. And there's the last two parshiot that we didn't cover, so we're going back parsha wise to Parsha Devarim and Vayetchanan because we haven't covered those yet. And then we'll learn a few things about Parshat Akev, not necessarily food related, not really at all food related, as we shall see. So basically, two separate classes in a way. Hopefully, if this goes well. So let's first of all let's share our source, Taam Dagan, and Baruch Hashem. Here we have Parshat Devarim, in which Hashem in His Torah teaches lessons about showing gratitude to Hashem, the difference between eating non-kosher food for pleasure or to spite Hashem, lessons in Bishul Akum, and more. So the parsha in Devarim, this whole sefer begins with, and by the way, Devarim at Hanan, then Ekev and Re'eh. These are parshiot of very much significance of Jewish philosophy, the core ideas of trusting in Hashem, believing in Hashem. All of those come from a lot of those ideas. A lot of the good musar comes from these parshiot. Ela hadvarim asher diber Moshe el kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moshe spoke to all of Israel. Be'ever Yarden, over the Jordan River. B'midbar ha'arava mol suf ben Paran uvein Tofel. This is over in the Rava against this area called the Suf, between Poran and Tofel. V'Lavan v'Hatzerot v'Dizahav, and Lavan and Hatzerot and Dizahav. It sounds like he's moving around the place as he's talking to all these different locations. So some of the first things about which Moshe rebukes the Jews, because that's what Sefer Devarim starts off as a rebuke. So the first things are the man, that they complained about the man, and they sinned with the very resources that Hashem gives them. So this is a common occurrence in the Torah, that the Jews complained about the man. The man was a test, and really the Jews didn't pass it with flying colors, not for a while. And so that's one thing. According to Rashi, that's what the first discussions about. And what's the dizahav, that they're complaining about the gold, or they misuse the gold? That's us. We often misuse. Whenever we make a mistake, whenever we're doing the wrong thing, what are we misusing? We're misusing the gifts Hashem gave us. We're misusing the breath and the legs and the power of our arms and whatever else. The ability to digest kosher food we misuse when we eat something that's not kosher. That's exactly what happens. That's how we are given gifts, and we don't use them correctly. So a few verses later, chapter 1, still verse 17. Much of Parsha Devarim is chapter 1. So verse 1, verse 17. Lo takiru panim b'mishpat kekatan gegodol tishmaun. Don't give different opinions, different faces based on in judgment, whether kekadon gegadol tishmaun. Listen to the small like you do to the big. Lo taguru mipnei ish. Don't be afraid of anybody, even if you're a judge and you have a mobster standing in front of you for judgment. You still have to give proper judgment. You can't be intimidated by anybody. Why? Ki mishpat le'elokimhu. Hashem, justice is Hashem's. Hashem will protect you. And v'adavar asher yiksha mikem tikra takrivun alai v'shamativ. And anything that's difficult for you, ask me, and I will hear you. So is Moshe saying this? He's talking to the other judges that there's a hierarchy of courts. There's a Supreme Court, and when a minor court doesn't know an answer to something, they can always ask the Supreme Court. Don't worry. In other words, don't fret. Don't say, who am I? How am I supposed to give judgment? You'll be able to do that. Now, the verse speaks to the one who appoints judges to use proper criteria. Right? Judges have to be able to use not the wrong criteria. Not, oh, that person is shorter than this person, so obviously guilty. Right? He can't say silly things like that. That's ridiculous. So Rashi says this verse is telling us how a person should appoint judges. One of the distinguishing qualifications for an acceptable judge is whether one eats non-kosher food for pleasure or to spite Hashem. So in terms of the Gemara in Sanhedrin 27a tells us when judges are picked, if it is found out that they ate at some point not kosher food, that doesn't mean they're all out. It could be that there's still possibly would be qualified to be a judge, even if they ate non-kosher food. Depends on why they did it. Did they do it to spite Hashem, to anger Hashem, or did they do it because they were tempted by this yummy food and they didn't have the strength to fight it then? If they have the strength to fight it now, then for all intents and purposes, they're still qualified to be a judge. Furthermore, a result of courts being inattentive in judgment is that people will not be satiated from the food they eat. That's a curse that we're given in the Gemara in Shabbat 33a tells us that even when we eat food, it won't be satisfying. So again, back to food, and so even if we pick the wrong judges and they don't do what they're supposed to do, that's what's going to happen. Chapter 1, verse 44. Like I said, chapter 1 is a very long chapter. The Amorites came who were dwelling in that mountain. And they chased you. And they attacked you. Like Devarim do, like bees do. They attacked you like bees. And they beat you down in Seir all the way until Charama. So one of the Chorma. So one of the things this what we're talking about here is when the Jewish people were told they're not allowed to go into the land, and some of them said, "Oh, but we're going to go anyway. We'll have Hashem with us." Hashem said, "No, you won't." And to prove it, the people who lived in those lands, when these Jews who weren't supposed to go in went in, they were attacked like bees. Now that we're on the subject of bees, it's worth mentioning we are allowed to eat honey from a bee. Now you might say, hey, the Torah talks about honey all the time. Eretz zavat chalav udvash. There's dvash everywhere. But the honey that the Torah talks about is actually date honey. So how do you know you're allowed to eat honey like from bees honey, the bee's knees? It's from the Gemara. The Oznaim Torah says we learn it from the fact that Yonatan's accidental eating from a beehive. So there's an incident in the Navi Shmuel Aleph, where Yonatan, the son of Shaul, who should have been king, but Shaul thought so anyway. But his best friend David HaMelech, it was in his name, David HaMelech. So David was chosen to be the king after Shaul, and so Yonatan did not become king. Anyway, he died, but he accidentally at one point he accidentally eats honey from a beehive, and that's not the problem that he ate honey from a beehive. The problem is he wasn't supposed to be eating it all at that point, and one is not allowed to take honey from a honeycomb on Shabbat. So that's how we know that we're allowed to eat honey. All right, chapter 2, verse 6, still in Parsha Devarim. If you're tuning in late or you're skipping around to find stuff about on Ivayat Hanan, we haven't gotten there yet. I mean, on Akev. Okay, Ochel Tishbaru Me'itam Bakesef. You should buy food from them for money. Well, these are the lands that the Jewish people were supposed to travel through peacefully. Ve'achaltem, and then you're going to eat that food. V'gam mayim tibru mitam, and you can even buy water from them. Ushtitam, and you may drink it. So the Jews are expected to buy water, even though it was not a commodity that people own and should not be traded, says Rav Hirsch. Now this is fascinating because we know nowadays for sure people people certainly, one moment. Yeah, good. All right. So people certainly trade in stuff that you would think nobody owns, right? Baruch Hashem, nobody charges money for oxygen yet. But uh, but for sure, water used to be free. You know, so but in the Torah here you have, and we were told to buy the water, even though it really didn't belong to anybody. Anyway, there's also a difference between the natural and blessedly artificial, says the Znaim Torah. That's in his first comment on this verse. So he says that there are those things that are natural, that like water, and there's things that are manufactured. And there's nothing wrong with manufactured stuff. This is a very big uh, debate amongst certain kinds of nutritionists nowadays. If if food that's made with chemicals, if that's good or bad. Well, everything is chemicals. All water is H2O. So everything is chemical. The question is it healthy or not? So that's not dependent on whether it was made or manufactured in a factory or whether it grew under sunlight. Not everything that grows is healthy, and not everything that's made in the factory is unhealthy. You have to use your mind a little more than that. Um, and the Znaim Latorah says that you have to buy the water for which you dig. You do the work, but you still have to pay for it. You have to pay for the water that results from it. It's kind of like a little bit like the lahavdil, like we have in America. If you find oil in your backyard, it doesn't belong to you. You kind of have to pay the government for it, even though it's yours, even though you dug for it, for an example. Anyway, another thing is one of the lessons you learn from this is don't take gifts from Gentiles to avoid forming relationships. Now, this is a very difficult halacha, but we still have this halacha. It's related to food. People do give gifts here and there. They receive gifts. They give gifts. We'll talk about giving gifts in a moment. But receiving gifts from a Gentile can also be a problem. There are halachot regarding how that's supposed to be done correctly, and basically we want to avoid having too close of a relationship. And yeah, so that's so there are ways to do that. Okay, now we're skipping to the next chapter finally. Chapter 2, verse 7 says, Ki Hashem Elokecha birachacha, Hashem your God blesses you. V'kol ma'asedecha, in all of your handiwork and everything you do with your hands. Yada lechtecha, he knows how you're going. In other words, at midbar agadol, he knows how you traveled through this big midbar, this big wilderness. Zerabayim shana for all 40 years. Hashem Elokecha imach, Hashem, your God was with you. Lo chasarta davar, and you didn't lack anything. You had everything you needed. Now, what can you learn from this verse? So it says, let me make sure. Yeah, it says Rashi. One of the lessons here is that being stingy when buying food and appearing poor when you have wealth shows ingratitude to Hashem, who provides you with your needs. Hashem gave you all these things. If you're pretending to be poorer than you are, what you're basically doing is you're spitting. You're throwing that gift back at Hashem's face. So for this reason, the Jews buy water and food from Edom, despite the fact that Hashem provides them with all of their needs. Hashem gives them man. Hashem gives them the traveling well of Miriam, and still they have to go and buy these things from these people, according to the Ramban. They also buy food and drink from their cousins, from Esav, to create a sense of kinship. Right? So the progenitors of the Roman people, says Sforno, the Esav, we want to have some sort of kinship with them, some sort of friendly terms, a little bit like Rebbe and Antoninus, as we have in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, 92 or so. So over there's quite a relationship that we can form with the Romans, and be friendly with them enough that we will feel safe, and at the same time we won't feel like we're too close to them, that we're losing our identity. Um, and then the next verse that we're looking at is chapter 2, verse 28. Achol bekesef tishberani ve'achalti. You shall sell me food for money. Again, this is another land that they're going through, and I'm going to eat it. This is what we're asking them to do, to sell us food so we can eat. Umayim bekesef titenli, and give us water for money. Shatiti, and I'll drink it. Rak ebra beraglai. Just let me pass through on foot. And the Torah hints to the law that one condition for bishul akum is that the food is changed from its natural state. So this is a note from the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, that for it to be bishul Yisrael, which is all food the Jews eat have to be cooked by Jews, or at least a Jew has to be involved in the cooking. Part of what it means for it to be bishul is for it to be changed from its natural state. If it was raw, then nothing happened. And then even if a Gentile put a cucumber, or I don't know, zucchini into the oven for a second, and it comes out, it still looks the same and everything else, then that's not an issue of bishul. Also, furthermore, just on that subject, another issue that's not bishul is if the food can be eaten raw. So, not a great example I used of a cucumber, especially. Cucumbers are definitely eaten raw, just because somebody cooked it and made it fancier somehow. I don't know. I've never cooked a cucumber, but if that's what somebody does, or yeah, so that's not going to be an issue. The additional condition is that it has to be chashuv enough for a state dinner, and that's another very important part of Bishul Yisrael, is that it only has to be Bishul Yisrael if it's important enough to be served at a state dinner. Now, that standard changes depending on times. So, for example, for the longest time, French fries were not considered a very chashuv thing. It was a snack food at most. And then what happened was the president started serving it. Our current president famously served French fries at a meal quite recently. And for us in halacha, what that means is that it's considered an important enough food that it has to be cooked by a Jew, if a Jew wants to eat it. Okay, chapter 2, verse 29. Kasher asuli b'nei Esav, as the children of Esav that dwell Yoshev b'Seir, they live in Seir. They did for us the same thing. Moavim, and the people of Moab, Hayoshvim Ba'ar, the people who live in Ar, Ad Asher Yavor, until I pass Et Hayarden El Haaretz Asher Hashem Elokeinu Noten Lanu, until I pass the Jordan to the land that Hashem has given us. So, first of all, the Edomites offered to sell us food and drink. When they do, and we buy it, we do not need it because we have Man and the Be'er Miriam, but they don't know that, so we buy it anyway. That's the way Rashi and the Gurari understand it. And one of the things we learn from this is the importance of offering free food as hospitality. There's a big mitzvah in offering, and making people feel comfortable, and there's a lot to be said for that. Okay, chapter 3, verse 13. We're almost in Ve'etchanan. V'yater Hagilad et Habashan, the rest of Gilad and all of the Bashan, Memlechet Og, Natati, the land of Og, I give to Chatzi Shevet Menashe, to half the tribe of Menashe, Kol Chevel HaArgov, V'chol HaBashan, all of the Argov and the Bashan, who Yikra Eretz Yisrael, the land that was used to be called the land of the Rephaim. So the Jews lived in lands conquered from Sichon and Og. When they live there, they're considered to be living outside of Eretz Yisrael proper. So even though some of the tribes took their inheritance there, that's still not Eretz Yisrael, and that land was thus exempt from bringing the first fruits as bikurim because these lands are considered less holy. One second, this is why we do this. Because these lands are less holy and are intended to remain uninhabited. However, since they were indeed conquered by the Jewish people, these lands have some sanctity in their being gifts from Hashem. Hashem gave them to us, so it has some sort of sanctity. It might not be the land of Israel, but it still has some sort of holiness, says the Or HaChaim, and therefore, just like Edom will be in the future, b'mheira v'yameinu. Okay, so that's Parsha Devarim. Ve'etchanan with Taam Dagan, the last Parsha that we have, some commentary, food-related commentary, is in which Hashem in His Torah teaches lessons about showing, about eating with intent to serve Hashem, guarding Shabbat with our preparation of food, the concern we may forget Hashem when we have our needs met, and more. Chapter 3, verse 25. So Moshe prays to go into Eretz Yisrael repeatedly. That's what Va'etchanan means. I prayed, right? Eber na et ha'aretz. He begs Hashem to let him go over to the good land. Asher be'ever hayarden, it's over the Jordan River. Hahar hatov hazeh v'halavanon. This good hill and the Levanon. So Hashem calls the land good, because His intent in coming into Eretz Yisrael is not to eat the delicious foods, says the Gemara in Sota. That's not His intent, but to grow from its superior holiness. It's a holy land, says the Malbim. And in Darash Moshe, he talks about this as well. That is true for Moshe's level. But how about us? Those of us currently on a lower level should learn from the example of the sages who gorged themselves on the food of Eretz Yisrael. So we're not on the level to say, oh, I just want to go to Eretz Yisrael to be holy. No, enjoy yourself. Eat as much food, as much of the food of Eretz Yisrael as you can. This is reminiscent of the anecdote about the Kotzker Rebbe. As a young man, when he first visited his future father-in-law, it was a Shabbat meal, and as he began eating, the father-in-law said, as people do when they're trying to be holy, they say, L'kavod Shabbat Kodesh. I'm doing this for the holiness of Shabbat. And so, to which the extremely honest young man said, L'chavod mein boch, in honor of my stomach. When questioned by the older man about the requirement to enjoy such things as food in honor of Shabbat, he responded that on his level, his first honest concern was his hunger. So L'kavod mein boch was his response. The purpose of coming to Eretz Yisrael is certainly not to eat good fruit. Rather, there is a kedusha, holiness in the fruit itself. If we eat it l'shem shemayim, for the purpose of heaven, says the Bach. This is one reason why the language in the bracha of al hamichya, said over baked grains, paraphrases the words of a prophet. Even going out of one's way to enjoy these fruit when traveling through the land is a part of fulfilling the mitzvah of seeing and eating from the beauty of Eretz Yisrael. Says who says that? That's the Shaloh the Tshuvot Lishma. Um, chapter 4, verse 9. Rakishamar lecha ushmor nafshecha mo'od. Take heed and protect your soul carefully. Pantishkach et advarim asher ru'u einecha, so that you don't forget what your eyes saw. Ufen yasuru milvavecha, you don't take out of your heart. Kol yimei chayecha, for your whole life. V'yodatam levavecha levanecha uvnei vanecha, and teach it to your sons and your children's children. So here we have an idea, by the way, very important, that our faith is not based on faith. It's an important thing to remember. A lot of religions, in fact, I would argue all religions except Judaism, it's one of the things that makes Judaism not really a religion in the proper sense. It's a longer discussion, but not for now. But just it's something to keep in mind that other religions require you to believe something. Judaism is not a system of belief; it's a system of knowledge. These are all logical things. All the animamins, all the I believes of the Rambam, they're not really belief. They all make sense, and that's actually in the Rambam's version, which is it has a paragraph on each one of the 13 principles of Jewish faith, and each one of them has logic behind it, has psukim, has a reliable source. It makes sense in terms of the world and everything else. So that's an important thing regarding these parshiot. We're supposed to remember what we saw with our own eyes. We're not supposed to just believe that it happened. We're supposed to tell it to our children because our children are supposed to trust us. We're obligated to protect ourselves from unhealthy or poisonous food is another thing. So that's what Gemara in Avodah Zarah says regarding this verse. So it says, guard your shmor nafshecha ma'od, guard your souls very carefully. Um, and the verse also teaches the prohibition against wasting time. For a yeshiva student, even spending 2 minutes eating an extra unnecessary piece of bread can be considered a waste of precious time. Remember, they're paying to be in yeshiva, or sometimes kollel, they're being paid to be in kollel, and they're wasting their time eating a piece of bread. That's 2 minutes that they've wasted. Chapter 4, verse 15. Unishmartem ma'od nafshetechem, take good care of yourselves. Ki lo ritem kol temuna b'yom the diber Hashem alechem b'chorev mitocha eish. And right, so a person must take care of one's body, eating and sleeping properly as well. This is according to Rav Pinkus. All right. Uh, thinking. Okay. Chapter 4, verse 32. Again, another important concept here. Kishal na liyamim rishonim asher hayu lefanecha. If you later on if you ask about the past, lemin hayom asher bara Elokim Adam al ha'aretz, from since the day that Hashem created man on earth, miksa shamayim, until he finished the heavens, the ad ksei shamayim, until the ends of the heavens, v'nihya kedavar hagadol hazeh o hanishma kamohu. Has anything like this ever happened before? This is a description of the giving of the Ten Commandments, Hashem giving the Torah at Har Sinai. That kind of event has never happened before. And you can investigate, you can try to study this. And not only that, but says Rashi, studying the creatures of the world can help us realize Hashem and his power. Right? If you study these things, if you, I learned with one of my chavrutas is a scientist, right? So he often brings up, just study how a body moves, how a creature works, how the eyes work, and you'll be amazed. Um, yeah. Okay. and you'll be amazed. Okay, chapter 5, verse 11. Chapter 5, verse 11. So it says in chapter 5, verse 11, Shemor et yom ha-shabbat lekadsho, kasher tzivcha Hashem elokecha. So the one of the Ten Commandments, the fifth, sorry, the fourth commandment is to observe Shabbat. Observe the day of Shabbat, keep it holy as Hashem your God commanded you. Now, what does that have to do with food? I'm glad you asked. It says the way to guard Shabbat is to avoid performing malacha, those activities that are called malacha. The Mishnah's list of the 39 malachot include nine out of 32, one third of the way to keep Shabbat, right? 9 out of 32 that deal with the preparation of food, which are, by the way, listed first. These include choresh, to plow, zoreah, to sow, kotzer, to reap, ma'amar, to gather, dash, to thresh, zorah, to winnow, borer, to sort, tochen, to grind, and maraked, to sift. So quite all the things you need in order to create bread, actually, the most foundational foods. Chapter 6, verse 3. Shemata Yisrael, Shemarta la'asot, asher yitav l'cha, v'asher tibun ma'od. Listen, Israel, be careful, and everything should be good for you. And you should tirbun, you should increase a lot. Ka'asher diber Hashem Elokei avatecha, lach eretz zavat chalav udvash. Hashem is going to give you this land flowing of milk and honey. Now, Yisrael will only be a land of milk and honey. I think this Sforno says this. I'm sorry, there's not in the Torah, not the Sforno at all. There's not in the Torah says that it will be a land of milk and honey only if we earn that. We have to earn that milk and honey, and that's an important concept. Perhaps could be expanded upon for other things as well, but not for now. But in terms of milk and honey, foods, back to food again. All right, chapter 6, verse 7. ושיננת לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך. You're supposed to, in the Shema, it says, in the Hafta, first paragraph of the Shema, it says, you shall teach them diligently to your children, you shall talk to them when you sit in your house, when you go on a walk, when you lie down, when you get up. So a Jewish male must say Shema every evening and morning, that's a halacha. Once it is the correct time in the evening to say it, one may not eat, drink, or nap before saying it. You have to. There's a mitzvah to do. Whenever that, by the way, that's true for a lot of mitzvah. You know, when you have a mitzvah to do, you're not supposed to eat because you might get distracted, you might get sleepy, you might go to sleep, you might wake up, and it might be too late to do the mitzvah. So that you should not really do this unless you have some sort of scheduled minyan or some sort of reminder to do it, so that you make sure you do it, and that's an important concept as well. Chapter 6, verse 11. Uvatim aleim kol tov, you're going to get houses that are filled with all kinds of good stuff. Asher lo meleta, that you did not fill. Uvoro chatzuvim asher lo chatzafta, these perfectly hewn out wells that you did not hew. Karami v'zeitim asher lo natata, all kinds of vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And you shall eat and be satisfied. Now, Jews are permitted every good thing that they find in the Canaanite cities. That's what it says. Malaim kol tuv, anything good you're allowed, which includes, by the way, even permission, according to the Gemara in Chulin, even permission to eat pork bacon. Whatever you find, if it's good, you can have it. The Jews are still forbidden from eating anything used for idolatry, though, says the Ramban. But aside from that, this teaches an important lesson. What's the lesson? What does kosher mean? Does kosher, and this is a great way. I don't think this is the last verse, but we're getting there. This is a great way to really encapsulate the entire theme here of Taam Dagan. All of this talk about what's food, what's kosher, what's healthy. Kosher food isn't necessarily healthy. I'll repeat. Just because it says kosher doesn't mean it's healthy. There's a lot of all kinds of candies and cookies and everything else that would not be considered healthy, but might still be kosher. So why do we keep kosher? It's not because we're trying to eat healthy. We keep kosher because it's a command from the king. Hashem said so. And if Hashem says so, something that's completely unhealthy might still be kosher. It might be edible even. This idea that we can't eat something not kosher, but we can't eat something that has to do with idolatry, very powerfully demonstrates the idea that the laws of kosher have nothing to do with physical or spiritual health per se, but are simply fulfillment of the word of Hashem. Hashem, the king, said to do it, so we do it. The Maharal writes. And that's what makes things kosher or not kosher. Chapter 6, verse 12. Yishamer lecha pen tishkach et Hashem. Guard yourself very much so you don't forget Hashem. Asher hotziticha hotziacha me'eretz Mitzrayim. We took you out of Mitzrayim, Beit Avadim, from the house of slavery. Since the houses will be, quote, filled with every good thing, as we said in the previous verse. All right. One second, I'm sorry. Okay. Um, since it's going to be filled with all the good things, our needs will be met with little effort. When that happens, there's a concern that we might forget that Hashem is the source of our material success. And this verse is thus necessary to remind us of our obligations to Him, says the Sforno. Chapter 6, verse 13, 6:13. Et Hashem Elokecha tira, fear Hashem, v'oto tavod, serve Him, v'shmo tishaveh, and you can swear in His name. Only in His name. In other words, serving Hashem means to take care of our physical needs, like eating, only for His sake. That's the Ramban writes. That's what it means to serve Hashem. It's that instead of serving yourself, you're serving Him. You're doing what you want, but you're doing it for His needs, quote unquote needs. Obviously, Hashem doesn't need anything. And the last verse in Parshat Vayetchanan, and the last verse that we haven't covered yet in Taam Dagan. After that, we have Parshat Ekev, which we did cover. It was our first class. Feel free to look it up. We have a whole playlist on our YouTube page of Taam Dagan, ideas about food, nutrition, and health on every parsha in the Torah. Chapter 7, verse 2, Untatem Hashem Elokecha lefanecha v'hikitam. Hashem, your God, will deliver them from before you, and you will destroy them. Hacherem techarim otam. You will definitely completely destroy them. Lo tichrot lahem brit v'lo tinachem tichanem. And this is talking about the Canaanites, that we're not allowed to make a covenant with them, although there are numerous exceptions. According to Tzitz Eliezer, the sages learn from this verse that one is forbidden from giving gifts to Gentiles. And so, as I said before, we had already before a verse that forbade us from getting gifts from Gentiles. But nevertheless, you may give bread as a gift to Gentiles if it's food that you will not eat anyway. You don't want it to go to waste. And also, this is a Tosfot in Eruvin, talks about this. Sorry. And therefore, you have this idea. Okay, let's do this now. So that was one second. How do I do this? Stop.